We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's January 16th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun. I'm the news anchor of Arirang's new daily morning program, News Generation, where young people make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Good morning.
And Niall Song.
Hello, everyone.
Now, both are here to be speaking on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Now, every day we will make a news feed for the new generation, and we're looking at the top trending hashtags on social media in the past 24 hours. Here's the 3 hashtags. The first one is hashtag plane crash. At least 68 people have died in a plane crash in Nepal on Sunday. The plane had 72 people, including 2 Korean nationals. The plane crashed on its approach to Pokhara International Airport. The second is hashtag bird flu. From 2005 to 2021, over 300 million poultry and wild birds were slaughtered in Europe and North America because they had bird flu. Experts are concerned that this influenza may evolve to become more lethal and contagious among even humans. The last hashtag is luxury goods. Morgan Stanley said South Koreans are the world's biggest spenders on luxury goods. Total spending grew 24% in 2022 to about $325 per capita. Now, why do you guys think that the new gen were interested in these particular hashtags?
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, to start off with the tragic aviation accident in Nepal, of the passengers, 53 are said to be Nepalese. There were 5 Indians, 4 Russians, and 2 Koreans on this flight. There was also 1 passenger each from Ireland, Australia, Argentina, and France, among others. We express our sincerest condolences to everyone affected by this tragedy.
Definitely. And if we move on to the second hashtag, Xiong?
Of course. I mean, Nicola J. Hill, an assistant professor of biology at the University of Massachusetts, also criticized on this matter of bird flu spread, saying that the virus could spread further between wild birds and farm birds, and that the high-density farming systems today is to blame for this situation.
I see. So we may be seeing another pandemic.
Possibly so, but we should try our best to stop that from actually happening.
Definitely.
Sure.
What about you, Niall?
I'm going to talk about the luxury goods. In these people's defenses of, purchasing so many things, my friend has actually been using this as a form of investment.
Wow.
And she's made 350% profit.
That is a whopping number.
That's more than I could say for my stocks.
Definitely.
So,
for me too.
I think people are interested in investing in luxury goods for that kind of profit. But again, we should spend wisely.
Yes, spending wisely. That's the key word today. All right, thank you for both of you. Now, moving on, NewsGen discusses different topics each day, and here's what we have for you today. Some feel nauseous. Some have an increase in heart rate. Some can't even breathe. All because their phone is ringing. It's called phone anxiety or telephobia. It's when you try to avoid having conversations over the phone and would rather text or send online messages. According to a survey by a part-time job recruitment portal last month, 3 out of 10 millennials and people in Gen Z said they had telephobia. Today, NewsGen looks at 3 questions. How do you know if you have telephobia? What causes it? And how can you cope with it? Well, that was quite a scary video, right?
That really was.
It was quite spooky. Oh my gosh, now you're tearing up. Are you okay?
I understand how they feel.
Oh.
All right, and that brings me to our discussion topic of the day. Telephobia, as we mentioned, a lot of the new gen have this thing. So why don't we check if any of us have this fear through an OX game?
Sure.
All right, so the first question is, do you prefer texting or using online messenger over calling?
X.
No?
So that means, I guess, I prefer calling over texting.
Why?
Yes, I mean, I've actually grown to prefer calling over texting over the past few years. Unless the reason for communication is to share a detailed piece of written information. I mean, for example, I've been working a lot with international organizations and local governments, And in those cases, just to get through the bureaucracy, swiftly move through to the right person, it's actually a lot more efficient to call than text.
Right, it's much more convenient.
Exactly.
What about you, Niall?
I have to text. Texting all the way because it's less invasive. You can open it whenever you want at your own pace, respond when you want. I mean, preferably faster than later. But, you know, I think it's like, you know how during COVID we started putting masks on and it's inconvenient. Like you said, it's inconvenient, but it keeps me a little bit protected.
I see. And it means that you're not put on the spot. You can have control over the situation. All right. Now, if we move on to the second question. Would you answer calls from unknown numbers?
Unknown numbers? Yes.
You would? Okay, why?
I would. I mean, that's also a habit that I picked up. A lot of different people call, new contacts might be developed, you might have given out your name cards and things like that. And quite often I've been getting emails saying, oh, I've left you a call, you didn't pick up, is there, you know, what's going on? So I try to pick up every unknown call as well, you know, if I can. And some of the numbers, you can tell if it's a sort of a devious scam attempt.
There's that feel.
Exactly, or telephone surveys. So, I mean, as long as I'm aware of what those are, you know, I try to pick up most of the unknown numbers calls.
I see. What about you, Niall?
No,
that was a quick no.
Yes, I try to go with my instincts. Usually, I mean, have I given out my numbers to a contact? Is this about a job, perhaps? But usually, no, I don't pick them up because, you know, you never know who it's going to be.
Right, it might be a random stranger.
Yeah.
So there should be a combination. I think people who know you should text you before.
Yeah. And they might actually even call you back again multiple times if they really need you, right?
Right, I see.
Do you pick up calls from unknown numbers?
For me, it's always half-half based on my mood. So if I'm happy that day, I'll be like, oh, who is
She's
it?
on my side.
I guess that'll go for all the calls that you receive. You'll be like,
I'm always
not
happy.
today.
Not today.
All right. Now, if we swiftly move on to the next question, are you guys afraid to make a mistake over a phone call?
Well, that's a no.
No.
That's a no. I mean, even though I now have no problems with taking any phone calls, I mean, I don't even care about making mistakes on phone calls as well, because that's how you just naturally have a conversation. But back in the days, I did, at the beginning of my career, I would say, when I started to make a lot of phone calls for business, for, you know, for sales related to persuade someone, I also had to constantly write scripts and do rehearsals, especially if the call had an intent of persuasion.
Right.
Right, so I mean, that developed me to the person I am now, I guess, who's not really afraid of phone calls.
So practice made perfect.
Well, not perfect, but you know,
Close
getting
to
there.
perfect.
Getting there.
I see. What about you, Niall? Are you scared?
I am. I'm still in development. I'm working on it, but I need my script because you never know how the conversation's gonna go. So you have to have the different scenarios, different outcomes for each thing, your rebuttals, your counter arguments in case, like he said, if it's in a persuasive mode, then you have to be able to defend yourself.
Right. It seems like you're writing an essay before.
Right.
Yeah. But you're not alone on this, Niall. There are actually a lot of people like yourself that are afraid to make phone calls. That's why in Canada, there's even like a consulting company called the Phone Lady.
Right.
And that helps.
I need that.
Exactly. And that helps people out like with one-on-one tutors. But it's actually quite pricey. It's around $480 an hour.
What?
Yes, and
$480?
for online seminars, it costs $365 for 30 minutes.
Jesus.
So
Wow.
that's quite pricey, right?
Very pricey, indeed, yeah. Well, luckily for you, Niall, I have a few pointers on how to overcome telephobia.
Oh.
Ooh.
And, unlike the Phone Lady, it's free of charge.
Oh, that's the greatest catch.
Right.
So you have with us a special lecture then.
Welcome to the special lecture, How to Conquer Telephobia, by no one other than I, Professor Kim. Here are 3 steps that you can try to overcome all stages of telephobia.
Okay.
1. Regardless of the matter, ask your close friends or family members to call instead of texting.
Okay.
2. Once you get used to that, write a script and try receiving business calls or work-related calls. Creating a thorough script, for example, for a random sales call, can subconsciously help you clearly structure your thoughts and boost your confidence.
I see.
3, and this is for the more seriously affected, if the first 2 steps were too difficult and you're experiencing physical side effects, such as an increase in your heart rate or muscular tension, Make sure to seek professional help and do not be afraid to do so.
Oh.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
How was that, Niall? Was that helpful?
You know, the theory is very helpful. I think I'm going to try it out step by step, like you said, but I'm still afraid.
Right.
But yeah, I'll try it.
Okay, baby steps, okay?
Baby steps at a
Little by
time.
little.
Well, I would like to thank you, Professor Kim, and if I may ask another question.
My gratitude.
Yes, in conflict situations then, Professor, would you prefer to solve the problem through texting rather than a phone call?
I guess we just drop the professor
The Professor
bit.
Act, yes.
And I would prefer to solve it with phone calls. So that's an
Okay.
X, I guess.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, it really would depend on the matter of conflict for me. Of course, you can better express yourself with the usage of tone and you're having a real phone conversation when you're using your voice. But if the situation requires sort of a lengthy logical debate with an overly emotional counterpart who's already upset, I would actually prefer to text than call.
What about you, Nell?
Text.
Okay, text all the way.
Okay, yes, like Xiong said, it's actually a good way to, you know, put that little space between you and the other person. If you're going through an emotional conversation, you can take your time to maybe calm down a little bit and write logically rather than just going at it in an emotional way that's unnecessary,
Right.
you know?
So I can see that you guys both give very compelling points to the table. Now let's wrap our discussion for now. Soon we'll speak to an
Sure.
expert to find out why a lot of the younger generation have this so-called telephobia. All right, let's now look into why a lot of the younger generation, including our very own Nael, have this phobia or anxiety over picking up calls. We have with us an associate lecturer from the University of Sydney Business School, whose main area of research includes the psychology behind consumers and their social media usage. Welcome, Dr. Vicki Antonopoulos, connected to us through Skype.
Hiya.
Hello.
Thanks
Great
for
to have
having me.
you here. All right, Professor, I'd like to ask you the first question. Back in September, you spoke with the Sydney Morning Herald and explained why you think Gen Z or the younger generation won't pick up their phones. Could you also tell us why?
Okay, so I think the main thing is Gen Z has grown up without phone calls to begin with. So they have been basically brought up, given a smartphone from a very young age, and given the opportunity to text and message. And I think the issue is being able to text and message on multiple apps as well, right? So they've had this, I guess, enormity of, you know, apps that allow you to pretty much do all the same thing. And they've been using that ever since they were really young. And on top of that, they have developed this habit of being able to edit and refine what they want to say before they send it.
Now,
And
we are.
that's only something that text can do.
All right, Doctor, we are having a little connection problem there, but if I may sum up what you just said, we just have various and multiple choices, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I can see it dropping out as well. But yeah, basically texts give you the opportunity to refine what you want to say before you say it. Whereas calls do not let you do that.
Yes.
Of
Okay.
course.
And Xiong, I know you have a question for Dr. Antonopoulos
Of course,
as
yeah.
well.
I mean, Dr. Antonopoulos, I was just wanted to ask, is the development of technology actually exacerbating the younger generation's anxiety for phone calls?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when we already have 3 or 4 different applications that we're speaking to someone on at one given time, that further normalizes texting and instant messaging behavior.
Right.
So, you know, it's all about normalization of a process. So, you know, if phone calls were the norm, then everyone would be doing it. And that's how Gen Z operates. They operate
Right.
on something we call social confirmation. So if all your friends are doing it, then it's okay to do it. But it just so happens to be that no one is making phone calls anymore.
All right, and now, do you have any questions for Dr. Antonopoulos?
Yes, almost even a personal one. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions for somebody with telephobia? How would we get over this and train ourselves to be better on phones?
Yeah, so I was just listening to the tips before, and they're actually really all quite valid tips. You could give me a pretty good run at my own job. But I think the number one thing to do is to normalize the practice, okay? So you do just have to push yourself to start doing it. So the longer you put it away and don't start, the worse you're going to become. So it's like any sort of skill. So it's like exercise or whatever that people are not looking forward to doing. The same thing goes for phone calls. So yeah, a good idea is to get your friends to start calling you, or maybe you want to start calling them, and they're probably going to think you're quite odd to begin with. But to be honest, it's better to practice with your friends rather than an employer, because I always say at some stage you are going to be put on the spot with a phone call. So it's best that you would have had that practice with your family and friends, because yeah, a job interview, it's going to be a phone call. You know, your boss, they're probably going to call you. So you want to have that normalization in place, and yeah, whether you like it or not, it's going to happen, because yeah, once you kind of start in the real world, like career and whatnot, you will need those skills. And I think it's very much linked to your skills of dealing in an impromptu situation as well. So usually we find people that are good on phone calls are really good in real life situations as well when put on the spot. So it really hones your kind of, I guess, at-tune senses. So the more you can just jump into the deep end, I would say jump into the deep end. You make a mistake, it's only your friends.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Antonopoulos. Thanks to you, we will take those advice and put it into heart.
Yes.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vicki.
Thank you.
All right, if we may bring the discussion back here in the studio, were there any points that Dr. Antonopoulos made that fascinated you?
I think the most fascinating point of her mention of thinking on the spot. I think as she mentioned at the end, a lot of the people that are good with phone calls are able to think on the spot, think of what to say, come up with a response. I think those skills are crucial in real life situations as well. I mean, texting definitely could postpone that journey and sort of take it step by step and let someone know, oh, this is what I'm thinking. Someone waits for a reply and things like that. But of course, as Dr. Antonopoulos mentioned, if you want to be good with phone calls, do be quick with your wit, I guess.
Right. And as she also mentioned, I was quite fascinated about how practice makes perfect, right?
Yes.
And did that affect you?
Yeah, I totally agreed with that. And it encouraged me to, you know, definitely work on it, maybe get my friends to call me. You guys can call me maybe once a week.
Once a week? Wait, so where are we in terms
Somewhere
of...
between the friends and the co-workers.
Okay,
no
so
friends.
All right, thank you so much. And I also like the fact that she mentioned about social conformity. Like everyone is on board with this idea, right?
Yeah.
And so in order for you to normalize it, basically just have some practice, ask your friends for help.
Definitely.
Right, so to summarize, telephobia may be reflecting some key traits among the younger generation, the desire for control and convenience, and the ability to multitask. And as Dr. Antonopoulos mentioned, texting may seem to reduce the risk of getting lost in the communication or being put on the spot, but it's really important to practice. Now, given that we are a live morning program, we always ask our viewers questions related to our discussion topic in advance, and we use this time to share with everyone what they had to say. So if you take a look at the screen, we heard what our viewers had to say about today's discussion topic, and they said, ETX8920 said, phone phobia is like when you're scared to turn on your phone, right? Especially when scammers or spam calling you.
Yeah.
It does include that a little bit, I guess.
It really does.
Yeah.
All right, and JaneHyun2581 said she did hear of phone phobia before, but she doesn't get nervous before picking up the phone, but she does prefer texting because it's much more convenient, especially if she's with her friends or at work. Lastly, Ancient Progeny 8295 said, when I get a phone call from my workplace, I have this dread that swallows me. I think Nell can relate to this one. It really makes me not want to pick up the phone because I don't like my workplace. I don't know if you can completely agree. But okay, what do you guys think about these comments, starting with Xiong?
I mean, I think ETX8920's comment on phone scams could be actual fear. I mean, in Korea as well, that's a huge issue with phishing, which P-S-H-I-N-G, phishing.
Yes.
And that's when, well, I guess a devious attempt to scam you out of your money, as well as telling you that they have ransom need to be paid for your daughters or your family members and things like that. And that's a serious matter in Korea.
is.
And apparently it seems very convincing when you receive those calls.
It is.
So I think I do relate to that sort of related call phobias, telephobias coming from that specific fear.
Yeah, if I may I add on
Sure.
to that, the development of technology with like AI and stuff, though there's a lot of pros, they are worried that there's that gray area where that can be used in
Definitely.
phishing, right? What about you, Niall? Which comment fascinated you the most?
I just really deeply related with ancient progeny about the dread that you feel. I mean, not about the work feeling terrible. I love my work, guys. But I don't definitely understand when you get that ring and you're like, oh,
Right.
and then you have to take that deep breath before you pick up. I understand.
Exactly, as we've seen in the today's topic video, when that rings, that phone vibrates,
Yeah.
you're like, your heart beats faster.
Start to sweat.
Yes.
Exactly.
But
And
we can work on it together.
yes,
Exactly.
let's normalize this
Yes.
step by step.
$480 per hour.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
or we
It
can get it
went
free
up.
of charge with
Friends
Professor Kim.
discounts.
Friends discount.
All right. Now, every day we do upload questions related to our discussion topic for our viewers to answer. And if you want to participate, please search Arirang News on YouTube and look into our community tab. Now, we've already come to the very last part of our discussion for today. Time flies.
Time does fly.
And speaking of how time flies, 10 years from now, Xiong, do you think calling will even exist?
You know what? I mean, definitely. I think communication through voice will be more of a commonplace with the development and advancement of virtual reality as well. I mean, for example, even the metaverse that exists today, you walk around with your avatar and you can freely speak without showing your face.
Right.
So that does bring down a lot of your sort of fears about making a phone call or speaking on a normal voice. Right, so I mean, I'm sure texting will prevail as well, maybe in different formats rather than all the different messengers that exist today.
Yeah.
All right. And shortly, Niall, what about you?
I think it will actually, I mean, as he said, texting will prevail, but the gaps will actually become bigger of whether you feel comfortable with it or not, the calling and the texting.
Right. But I think the moral of the day is whatever you feel comfortable with,
Yes.
go with it, but just
Definitely.
take baby steps. All right. Today we talked about phone anxiety, aka telephobia, a common trait among a lot of the younger generation. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you the topics that young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Xiong
My pleasure, yeah.
and Niall Song,
No problem.
both joining me here in the studio. Thank you everyone at home for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow morning because we are News Generation.